Hey everyone, welcome back to Topher Drives, where this week I've been living with what is still one of my favorite daily drivers. This is the 2024 Volvo S60 Recharge T8 Ultimate, and you join me on the roof in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where we're going to do a bit of a back from the office commute here in this luxury stealth wealth plug-in hybrid sedan. I always love when we have Volvos because they're just the most blissful experiences, and I always have the most lovely weeks driving this car. So before we get on the road, let's talk about what we have right here in front of us. Well, this is a Thunder Gray Ultimate S60 Recharge, which means it is a plug-in hybrid. For the powertrain under the hood, a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, as well, of course, as an electric motor. Combined power output in this car, 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque. This Volvo S60 is all-wheel drive, and we have an 8-speed automatic transmission. So what do you get with the ultimate trim? Well, the base Volvo S60 Recharge starts around 53 grand. Ultimate trim bumps you up to around $58,000. And there are a couple of key items that make me think the Ultimate is worth the money, and it's actually the one I would go for. You get these 19-inch wheels, which I think look like they were pulled straight off of a concept car from the Geneva Motor Show or something. I think they fit the bill nicely and kind of bring this thing to the new era, because this design and this car itself is a little bit old, but that's okay. Volvos kind of age like fine wine, and especially this newer generation of cars, they do still look brand new. Additionally, on the Ultimate trim, we get standard Harman Kardon sound, but you also have the option to opt for Bowers and Wilkins, which this car does have. And I always joke that the Bowers and Wilkins system is like a $60,000 sound system with a free car attached. It is always worth the $3,000 additional price to put that on your car. We also get a head-up display, we get the Pilot Assist adaptive cruise control system, and we get some more adjustment for our driver's seat. You also get the option to opt for these beautiful wool blend seats, which gets you the crystal shift knob. So a number of adornments here that I think is definitely worth the additional $5 grand on top of the base price for the S60 Recharge. So let's talk some commute essentials. How much plug-in range do you get with this car? Well, I've been seeing about 40 miles after I plug this thing in, and I drove the entire way here from my house, which is about 15 miles, and I used about 12 miles of electric range. So if we wanted to, or if you wanted to rather, you could do probably your entire commute to work and back. If you're, the average person, you live 20 to 30 minutes from the office, you could do this all on electric mode, which is what the beauty of this car is. I've been driving this all week, no joke. I have not heard the ICE engine run one time, and I've just been plugging it in every night. I've been doing my 40 or so miles a day, and it's just been great. So let's see how much room you have in the back. Maybe you're carpooling, you have people who have bags with them or something. The Volvo S60 does have a pretty decently sized trunk. I'm not gonna tell you it's large, but it is big enough to get the job done. You've also got a little pass-through right there in the middle. You've got some netting to hold some things. You can see we have our charger right here, which is just a level 1 unit. Under the floor, no additional storage because this is a plug-in hybrid, so we have all of our hybrid tech and batteries and a goop kit under the trunk floor. Also, apologies, I am next to an active construction site, which is what all of the background noise is, but I've been trying to talk and drown that out. But we are in the real world still, and we're surrounded by a bunch of buildings as well, but I like to kind of set the scene here for the city commutes that we do, and I think that it works out pretty well. Let's take a look in the back seat of this S60. Cottonwood is flying everywhere. I'm quite allergic. Oh, and our headrests are folded down, so let's pop those back up. The party trick of Volvos is they have power folding rear headrests. So there's this little button right here, and you can also do it from the infotainment screen, but you can whack your friends in the head if you're riding in the back of this Volvo. I don't know. Anyways, let's see. Backseat room is pretty good in this car. We'll shut the door, and I've got enough headroom. I've got enough legroom. 5'11", sat behind myself. I am feeling just fine. I've got a little hump back here for drivetrain, battery, whatever it may be. Someone corrected me in the last video, but I forgot what I said that was corrected. But you do have a hump in the middle. There is still a middle seat belt, but I wouldn't really recommend you put anybody there because it would be pretty tight. We have some pop-out cup holders from our armrest. There's that pass-through I talked to you about earlier. heated rear seats, and a couple of USB-C ports. So you have enough amenities back here to comfortably transport two full-size adults, and well, I'm pretty dang cozy back here, and partially because of these fantastic wool blend seats. I feel like a lot of people look down on cloth interior and kind of see it as cheap and base model-ish, but this wool blend feels really nice. It looks the part. The only downside is if you spill something in it, it's a lot harder to clean up, and a couple of people that have had this car before me, I think, have done that, because there are some mystery brown droppings on the driver's seat, and we will not be investigating those any further. Just wanted to show you what I meant, and also demonstrate that if you are worried about spilling some things, if you're having coffee every morning, maybe these aren't the seats for you, but they do certainly look very nice. Let's pop the hood. Let's show you what we have. As I mentioned, over 500 pound-feet of torque, combined power output in this Volvo S60. And I always forget how quick these cars are. We drive these all the time. In fact, this is the second one of these I've had in a row. We had an XC60 last week, which I road tripped with Charlie. You all should have seen that video by now. But it feels extra quick in this tiny little Volvo S60. We have this kind of foam engine cover, which mitigates some of our engine noise. Over here on the right, we have our hybrid tech. We have our little washer fluid fill, and I think Volvos are so funny because the hood sticks up so far. It's like it's always in service position, but it gives you plenty of access to this powertrain if you were to be servicing it yourself. All right, let's shut the bonnet. There we go. Now, this is the dark theme. This is not the black edition, but we do still have some black touches here on the outside of the car, as well as a pretty sizable moonroof there. All right, well, we've done so many videos on these cars by now. In fact, I had one that was just about this exact spec in California. You guys know the deal. You know how much I love these. And I thought today we would just talk about how nice this car is to drive on a day-to-day basis. We'll kind of just go around the block here in the city, and we'll go out kind of like we normally do. There's your charge port. Meant to show that earlier. Level 2 charging, you will be able to charge this thing fully overnight, so it's been working out great for me. And we're greeted with a pretty familiar sight. I mean, pretty much every Volvo looks like this. They kind of all have this dashboard design, this steering wheel, this center console layout. We still don't have any wireless Apple CarPlay in this car, so I do have an cord here, which brings me to the first thing actually that I don't like about this car, which are very few and far between, but the most frustrating part about the S60 and the V60 is the lack of places to put things, and especially when you have a car with wired Apple CarPlay, you need somewhere to put your phone, and my phone does fit in here, but you have to play Tetris to get it to fit when you're plugged in. I think, is that how I got it to fit before? No, we're not even gonna do it. But if you have a smaller, this is an iPhone 15 Plus, so it doesn't fit in there. If you have a slightly smaller phone, it probably would, but it's just one of those things where we need to have some more storage solutions if you're not gonna have wireless CarPlay. And just in general, just, you know, having places to put things. You've got two cup holders up here. I've got my little baby water bottle in one of them, which I guess it can stay here, whatever. You've got a little bit of space in your door pockets, but again, I mean, you probably could argue that, oh, hey, look at that. Little baby water bottle fits right there. But you could argue that some more room would be nice. So let's fire this thing up and we'll go for a drive, because I will then forget about the lack of storage solutions. Beautiful volume knob there right in the middle. Volvo makes sure to put that front and center, but that is pretty much it as far as physical controls go in this car. Got a couple of little skip track volume knob. You've got your defrost and your hazards, which are all nice to have as physical. Climate control lives in the infotainment. We all know this by now. This is the Volvo way. The climate control goes in multiples of 2, which I find amusing because it's usually what I set my climate to anyways. You know, at this point, I think that they've made this infotainment work fast enough to where it doesn't really bother me, and I haven't been irritated with this at all this week, which is nice. We have our built-in Google Maps into this car. This car runs Android Automotive, which works very nicely. And honestly, I think that's about it. I don't really think I need to go over anything else. You guys know this car so well by now, and I have multiple other videos of this car on my channel if you want to go and check those out. Let's use our crystal to put ourselves into reverse. We'll show you our parking camera situation. Default is the rear camera. You have to click the screen again if you want to have your 360 camera pop up. Kind of disappointing that you can't have both on there at the same time, because sometimes when I'm backing into spots, I like to simultaneously view my rear parking camera as well as my 360 cam. We have a front camera on this car as well, which is nice for if you are pulling up to a parking block or something like that, able to make sure you don't rip the front off of this car. Okay, so sometimes it's hard for me to put into words why I like Volvos so much, but I wanted to start in the parking structure to kind of aid myself in explaining why. And a lot of it comes down to the steering feel in these cars, which sounds hilarious, but Volvos have such a light and precise steering feel that there isn't really any other car on the market that matches it. And you know, for lightness, you could argue, yes, Rolls-Royce steering is lighter than this, but you get such precision with this car. And if you're going to build a luxury car, you have to have steering that is light and precise. And there's a really nice 986 Boxster over there to interrupt myself. But this Volvo S60 does the job perfectly. And it's not just the S60, it's every Volvo. And this kind of comes down to pretty much every Volvo driving the same, and you kind of just pick which size works for you, and they all have the same powertrains at this point, and they all pretty much drive the same. The steering is so light, but if you're not a big fan of light steering, you can go into the settings here, into your driving menu. You can go down to the bottom and you can toggle on what Volvo calls steering feel firm, and then that will firm up your steering. And I'll be honest, it's still pretty light in steering feel firm mode, but it does give you a little bit more feel in general. If you're going out and you want to do some spirited driving, you can toggle that on. The other nice thing about this T8 is you're able to drive it in B mode and fully one pedal drive this plug-in hybrid, which is somewhat uncommon for a PHEV. Normally this is something you only see in a full EV, but I can lift my foot off the accelerator even going downhill here in this parking structure, and the car will pretty briskly there come to a stop. Also have a number of drive modes here in this Volvo S60. Hybrid, power, pure, and constant all-wheel drive. Let me decode that for you. Hybrid mode is normal, power is sport, pure is full EV until the battery runs out, and constant all-wheel drive, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. It locks itself into all-wheel drive mode between your ICE and your EV modes. I think this person is trying to park. This is the worst thing I've ever watched. Let's pull out of the parking structure and get ourselves out here onto the road. And I failed in my last video to have enough charge in the Volvo S60 to do the drive. So I think we'll do most of today's drive in EV mode, because let's be honest, this is how you're going to be driving this car most of the time. And I want to give you guys a good, realistic experience. So we'll kind of shoot around the city here in quietness, in silence rather. Lots of red Ford Escapes, doing lots of parking today. Come to a stop, and I just love the effortless nature of this car. We talked about the steering, we talked about being able to one pedal drive this car, but the throttle tuning, the suspension tuning, I mean, it's cozy to sit in, it's cozy to ride in. This seat is very supportive. We just took a Volvo XC60 on an 800-mile road trip, and these are cars that you can sit in all day and not get fatigued, and they encourage you to keep on going. But what they don't encourage you to do is to drive quickly. And I really, really like the understatedness of these cars. You know, Volvo is a luxury brand, but Volvo is not Gucci. Volvo is not Louis Vuitton. Volvo is more so the Brunello Cucinelli of cars. And there is a pink WRX up there. I don't know if you guys saw that drive by. What I'm trying to say is that's quiet luxury. And I love that so much because you don't feel the need to be flashy in a Volvo. You're kind of just able to keep to yourself, be an architect. Since we don't have Saabs anymore, the architects had to find something else to drive. Most of them have, I think, come to Volvos. And then I feel like that says a lot about this brand and what they stand for. And I'm about it. There's something about these Volvos that it's one of those things where if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Use that light steering, go around that parking cone. We don't have a stop sign, so not entirely sure what's going on. front of me. Come into a stop with that one pedal drive. Very, very nice progressive throttle response. We're going to get out of the way of this bus. What's great about this car is the Volvo dynamics paired with the size of the S60. It complements this really well because you're able to use this car in a city setting with very low stress. Tell school just got out because the power lines are riddled with white Air Force Ones. We have a fully digital cluster here in this Volvo S60, which does the job really nicely because you can have it run your Android Automotive Google Map in here. But if you go to Apple CarPlay and you turn on a destination here in your Apple Maps, it puts your Apple Map on the screen. And what's even cooler about this is you can see that on the cluster, it gives you a very zoomed out view of the entire city. But if you switch on your Apple CarPlay to Spotify and get off of the map, this will zoom in and give you step-by-step instructions on how to get to your destination. So a pretty dang intuitive development here for the cluster, working in hand with the infotainment. I love what they've done with this. I mean, even over some of these gnarly potholes, the ride quality is fantastic. The damping kind of leans more towards the soft side, which I don't mind. Got a little bit of that impact harshness on some larger potholes, but overall, for the size of this car, for the class of vehicle, I think that this is pretty dang good. Another thing I want to compliment this Volvo on, which is going to sound really silly, is how perfect the vent placement is in this car. You can go in here, you can turn up your vent speed or your fan speed like this rather, and it's so easy to aim these vents. I can't tell you how many new cars are going for this futuristic, simplistic, minimalist look in the cabin, and part of what that does is it shrinks the air vents. And Volvo, this is not a problem because literally the entire sides of the infotainment screen are air vents. You've got this really big chunky one to the left of the steering wheel, and you're able to aim these at you in such precision. And the actual adjustments, you can hear those really nice clicks there. They've just done this so well, which could explain why this car hasn't been new in a while, because they kind of just knocked it out of the park in the late 2010s with this generation of S60 and this kind of corporate interior for Volvos as a whole. Once you get to the traffic part of your commute, again, everything comes together. I feel like a broken record right now because there's really nothing for me to criticize about the driving experience of this car. And I guess what the point I'm trying to get across is, no matter what situation you're in, this car is able to adapt and you're able to just drive with such ease, for lack of a better word here. One pedal drive, don't have to move my foot when I'm in traffic, hardly at all. We are escaping the traffic, except upon looking at our little Google Maps display here, we're going to be entering even more onto the highway. I didn't mean for this to be a rush hour commute today, but it looks like it's turning into one. All right, well, let's follow this very nice Volvo S80 on to the entrance ramp here onto the highway, and we'll give you some highway impressions. And then I also want to do a little bit of a demo on this Bowers & Wilkins, which you guys have already heard a million times, but you can't do a Volvo video and not listen to the $3,200 Bowers & Wilkins system. And actually, speaking of that, I didn't mention how much the entire cost of this car is MSRP. This car, as tested, is about $62,000. So on top of the 58 grand, really the only option we have is this Bowers & Wilkins, and with destination and everything, that puts this car up to $62,000. So we'll get ourselves merged on here and we'll talk about some of the highway manners. This car in Ultimate trim does have pilot assist, so it has, somewhat of a driver aid, not full self-driving. The system is still a little bit behind. It is starting to feel a little bit old. When it came out, I was blown away by it when I first drove it in a car, I think in like 2021 or 2020. is definitely starting to show its age. One other thing I want to show you guys now that we are merged onto the highway is if you're one of those people that doesn't like to use your electric range when you're on the highway, if you like to preserve that for when you're in the city, you're able to use a couple of different drive modes. The one we'll use today is power mode, because I want to show you what that does with the cluster as well. So you can put the car into power. That will fire up your ICE engine, and it is a seamless transition. We're now running here just about 2,000 RPM with this 2-liter 4-cylinder. And you can hear that now. So if you're someone that likes to run that while you're on the highway, you are able to do so. Power mode also gives you full access to your 455 horsepower and 523 pound-feet of torque, so you're able to make some effortless passes. It's also worth mentioning the overall range on this car with ICE and electric combined. If you consider the 470 miles right here indicated on the cluster, as well as the around 40 miles that you get with the EV, you should always have 500 miles at your disposal in this car. Okay, let's put this back into hybrid mode. We'll let it do its thing. Why don't we play ourselves into this next section of highway with a sound system test.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without your face. Well, what can I do? 'Cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need you to survive. Whoa, survive. I need you to survive. 'Cause without you by my side, I can't survive.
All right, so that was in studio mode driver. I want to show you guys also the concert mode in this car, and we do have a different song queued up for that. It's one I just discovered. I've used it in a couple of videos, so let's turn that up now.
Blue fire lighting up the pavement. The night is feeling young. The streets are restless. My hands shaking like I need it. I don't know why you got me sinking so low.
Let's do Jazz Club here.
Girl, you got me restless. I got to know, don't keep me waiting. Said I'm driving.
All right, we got to wrap this up because I got more stuff to say about the car, but this is the most fantastic sound system I think on the market, apart from maybe a bespoke system in a Rolls-Royce. I mean, Volvo just does this so perfectly, and I think the architecture of the S60 kind of allows for this system to really be at its best. It wasn't as good in the Volvo XC60 that I was driving last week. Still very impressive, but the size of this car, the architecture, like I said, it does the job so perfectly. So right now we're running with Pilot Assist set to on. You can see that it is adapting here with the traffic. Not only that, it is steering for me as well with the lane keep assist. This is the car applying the brakes right now. Not I. Okay, so Pilot Assist does a pretty good job. The only place where it kind of lacks is when you go to make a lane change, which we're going to do now because we are exiting to the left. Don't yell at me for driving in the left lane. It gets a little bit nervous, and sometimes it can apply the brakes mid-lane change, which is a bit jarring. It's not necessarily what you want when you're going to make a pass, you have traffic coming in the left lane. You don't want to be crashed into. But I think they can work out a few kinks with that and get that back to the modern times. And I'm excited to drive like the EX30 and the EX90 and some of the new stuff that will have some newer tech. Additionally, how is the seating position? How is the overall comfort of the interior here in the S60? Well, elbow comfort is fantastic. You guys know Volvo does good on that front. The door panel here on the left-hand side, quite squishy. The center console is a little bit more stiff, but you can kind of set yourself up to drive this car with both elbows rested, both hands on the steering wheel. Your visibility out of this car is really nice. It's very open greenhouse. The seating position is nice. You can see the hood even with the seat in the furthest down position. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything covered. I guess the only other thing worth mentioning is that this car is very well seated on the highway. You don't get the sense that it's always wanting to change direction. It's very relaxed, and that goes along with everything else on the car. The steering does weight up a little bit once you're at higher speeds, which is a nice thing as well, because you don't always want steering that you're able to do with your pinky when you're on the highway, because things can get a bit sketchy. So the Volvo steering does weight up when you're at a bit of a higher speed. What else can I say about this car? Well, I've got so many videos on this car at this point, I feel like it's hard to come up with new things. But what I want to leave you with is that, look, I'm not going to tell you that this car checks all the boxes. This car is definitely not for everybody. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's as engaging to drive as a BMW M340i or even a base model 3 Series. If you're a driver, if you're someone that really enjoys, feeling every bit of road surface, through the steering wheel, if you're someone that likes to take corners and likes to push it to the limit on the commute, this car might not be the one for you. And I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that this has as gimmicky and as striking of an interior as a Mercedes C-Class. It's a very sort of just mature and elegant design in this car. And I also understand that that may not be for everybody. But what I'm trying to say is this car is just the ultimate commuter, and it just does everything perfectly in a non-obnoxious way, in a non-look-at-me fashion. And if that's what you're about, if you're someone that doesn't walk around and tell everybody at parties how much money you make every year and wearing a big gold chain and whatever, that might be a little bit obtuse for my analogy, but bear with me. Everything in this car, between the Bowers & Wilkins sound system, the wool seats, the supportive nature of these wool seats, the way everything works in here, it's just good. It all works together in such a nice way. It's really just the ultimate daily driver. And that's the way that I've always put it. Whenever people ask me if you sold everything, if you kind of just didn't have a different car every week, if you weren't doing this job, what would you have as a daily driver? And it's always easy for me. A Volvo, and probably an S60 or a V60, the V60 being the wagon version of this very car. And they fit me very well, and I think that they fit a lot of people very well that don't necessarily embrace these cars, and they're a little bit overlooked, they're a little bit underappreciated. I hope you're able to watch this video and get a bit of a better feel for Volvo as a whole, and also for the S60 if you've been considering one, because you definitely should. Okay, well, I'm sure I've left some things out, but if I have, you can go watch my other Volvo videos, or you can comment and ask me any questions there. I will do my best to get back to you. Let's set our parking brake here. Use our little switch there to shut the car off. Check receipts. Avoid leaving people or pets in the vehicle. I don't have any people or pets back there. I think we're good. We still have 480 miles of fuel range left, 15 miles still remaining of battery range. So we've done our commute out, our commute back, and we still have 15 miles of range in a pretty realistic, I would say, commute route. All right, well, let's jump out. We'll take one last look at this thing, and that will wrap it up for us today. Again, please ask me. I've driven so many of these cars at this point, back to back, and I've got a pretty good feel for what they have to offer. So if you have any questions, let me know. But just know that this is what I'd have if someone asked me, what would you like to daily drive? I think for 62 grand, it is a bit much, but you can get one of these that's a few years old that has pretty much everything in it. It's a little bit tough to find them with the Bowers & Wilkins on the used market, but if you're able to find one that's a couple years old, CPO'd, something around like 40 grand, I mean, I can't really think of any better option. So here it is. I don't say that too often, but this is something that I would add to my own personal stable. So that's that. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.